The type of photography I do is sort of, it's obsessed with chance, and it's obsessed with that right place, right time hope or mentality that photographers have. My name is Jerry Hsu, and I'm a photographer. I live in Los Angeles. Skateboarding and photography they do occupy different parts of the way I look at things, but I think like the parallels and the overlaps are way more than the differences. I mean, I approach photography more artistically as an art. Not that I don't do that with skateboarding, but it's just different with skateboarding. I think it's not an art form, and it's artistic, but it's not an art form. And so it's weird because I was gonna say that my intention with photography is more deliberate, but the my intention with skateboarding is also extremely deliberate, and how I want it to be presented, and down to like what clothes I'm wearing. Like it's like very you know, it's very thought through. I mean, often it's not. It's very spontaneous, kind of like photography too. But I think they occupy more. They share more than they don't in my mind, and like even the way I think like they inform each other. Like skateboarding, I was outside constantly, and it makes you uh, constantly want to explore new environments and have curiosity about your environment. And so it really informs how I photograph stuff. It's just, it really makes me want to know about what's behind a corner, or like it's taught me a lot about patience and failure. Taking photos is just full of failure, and skateboarding is like that too. It takes a lot of work and perseverance to like get what you want. It's very helpful to have been a skateboarder first. Skateboarding on all different levels, but especially at the pro level, like it's really, really difficult. I've had to go to spots and try to film a thing where it's like this elaborate like filmers, photographers, like there's people you need there to like watch the street. Like it's this whole production, and I mean I've had to go back to places 14 times, like where it's like a 5 hours each time, where it's just completely like an excruciating experience. But when you get it, it's all really like worth it, and you feel like, wow, I really got what I wanted. But it's just it's misery for hours and hours and hours, day after day, day after day. And with photography, I think a lot of people, they don't understand how much like it's awful, and how much you don't really get anything that you want. Like, someone said the other day, like it must be so fun to go out there and shoot photos, and I I agree with that, but also it's, some days from start to finish, it's pretty punishing. It's just nothing is happening, nothing that you want is happening, or something you want gets away from you. It's filled with so much regret, like if you weren't brave enough to do something, or you weren't able to persuade someone to be in a photo or something like that. It's just, if you get back like 10 rolls of film, 36 exposures each, if you get two photos that are meaningful to you, I think that's pretty successful. But even that is pushing it. I mean, you have to learn to cope with this non-immediacy. In our culture now, it's really obsessed with immediacy. So I feel like I think it's surprising sometimes to people when they're like, oh, those numbers don't sound very enthusiastic. And they're not. But another thing that happens too is, when you get film back, it's not really how you truly are going to feel about the photos in the end, like, because I've revisited stuff that's 10 years old that I've seen hundreds of times. And for some reason, now that this image means something to me, like it had time to, I don't know what happened, but maybe I changed. I think that's something also important with archiving and saving. And that's like something I like about film, is that like it's physical and I have to keep it, because I see people just like, oh, delete, entire thing. And I'm like, whoa, like, you might be deleting something that in 5 years you would look at and be like, oh, wow, this is. But yeah, I think like, you know, like most art making, it's kind of awful, most of it. I think it's just about when you finally get what you want or something like what you want, it sort of makes you kind of forget about all that shittiness. But it is hard. It's hard to confront, like if in the morning, like, and you're like, I'm gonna go shoot photos today. And if you start really thinking too much about like what's gonna happen, where do I go? If you start just asking questions, and if you start like having all this hesitation, I mean, it happens to me all the time. Like I'll just stay at home, or I won't go do it. And something that I've learned is I can't think about what's gonna happen. I just have to like put myself there. And I think that's something that people that I talk to get really tangled up with, is just like, they make an assumption or a presumption about what the day will be like. And maybe they're right or whatever. Maybe I'm right about it, but like about how bad it's going to be. But like so much of what I do is about chance, and so much what I do is about hope, that there's just, I can't, it's a do or don't situation. For me anyways, it's just like you have to force yourself to just, because if you're not there, then nothing will, you'll never get anything that you want. So you just have to put yourself there and have a lot of hope. I think like the type of photography that I do involves a lot of hope and just like a trust that something might happen. I'll just drive around until I feel like, okay, like maybe I'll get out. Maybe I'll walk around. A lot of it is just driving and walking. There is no process really. It's really just, the only thing that I need to focus on is getting out the door. Like getting out the door is the most important thing that I need to do. Everything else is completely random, and it's just, you sort of just get into a flow of direction that I don't really control it. And also like trying to control it, trying to like, trying to visualize what I'm trying to do, or it just doesn't work. I think like that type of intention and sort of control, that happens more in the editing process, like when you put everything together, that's when that part of your brains, or my brain anyways, like that's when it sort of kicks in. The photography, the actual photographing part is I don't know, it's just instinct, and sort of this part, like I don't know what I'm doing at all. That's just something I've learned to sort of surrender to, and it's not for everybody. I think a lot of people can't operate like that. I do a series of photography that is just made by cell phones, and I think I started it in, I think like 2005, 2006, when me and my friends all had BlackBerry phones, and the camera was just good enough, but still terrible to kind of make pictures. Once we started using data to share photos, we could freely send photos to each other instantly. That is completely ubiquitous now, but at the time it was pretty new. It just felt really cool to be able to, I could send a photo to someone in another country and they could see it instantly, and we could start talking about it. And it was so that's how I started taking those pictures. It was sort of note taking, but also they were very personalized for specific people. Like, this will make this specific person laugh or smile or whatever. It was just like this kind of, it was a nice way to communicate with pictures. So that's how that started. And then I started archiving them, and like, really, really kind of conscious about saving them, because I felt like, oh, maybe I can do something with this someday. And then I started a blog, and people responded to the blog, and then eventually made a couple books out of it. So the first one is called The Beautiful Flowers, the World. That was made with all Blackberries. And then I made a second one called Lonely City, and that was made with all iPhone. I like the cell phone series because it sort of challenges a lot of like the hierarchy of photography, and it's sort of, kind of, they're poor quality images. And I think it really speaks to the content, because the reason that it exists, I think, is sort of like, it's sort of trading quality for accessibility. It's just about like instantaneous gratification. It's really like everyday, like anti-craftsmanship, like capitalist bullshit, you know, like this, like the neoliberal, the small, like the small tragedies of like this like neoliberal hell we live in, where like everything is like made shitty, there's mistakes, and and ultimately it's funny, it's a little bit funny, and like humor has a lot to do with the cell phone stuff. So yeah, it just sort of happened that way. Yeah, it became like a sort of a series that I really like, but it also kind of interferes with my other practice, which is like normal 35 millimeter photography. Because like when you come upon a situation and it's to have that moment of hesitation of like, oh, like what does this fall under? Like what, you know, what that kind of sucks, because I'm kind of like I'm sort of making this like split second deliberation that I really don't want to be making. So it does kind of get in the way. I love the cell phone stuff, you know. I think like the film stuff is it's about something deeper inside me, but the phone stuff I think is more about coping, you know, like using humor to kind of like cope with like the way that the world is, you know, just like the small tragedies of, you know, everyday life. And by what I mean by small tragedy is just like something that's printed and like there's a spelling error, like there's just like all these things in the world that it's like, wow, no one cares about anything. And I think that's kind of, it's sad, but it's like, but it's also really funny. It's just a combination of like how I see things, and also sort of when I started making those pictures, a lot of it had to do with this is kind of funny, like I'm gonna send this to someone who thinks it's funny. You know, I would think like, oh, like Nat would think this is funny, or John would think this is funny, or whatever. Humor is, it is something that really helps you communicate with people. And I think that's sort of why the series works, because I think the content is really, really accessible, you know, to people. And not everyone thinks it's funny, but I think if you do, you can really connect with it. And they're not always funny, you know, like I think like the majority of it is, and it is like a through line, but it's one of the ultimate ways that I communicate with people. So I think that's kind of why the work turns out the way it does. I think it would be hard to sell like cell phone photos as artwork, especially the way that I do it. Like, and I never wanted it to be like anti fine art photography, but I did want to see if I could make something interesting with something that photographers really like turn their nose up at. You know what I mean? Like it's like high resolution film, all that stuff is very hierarchically, it's at the top, and then like low resolution is really at the bottom. So I really kind of was curious if I could make something interesting that I liked with phones and like really try and do it. And that was part of the motivation, because definitely at first I was like, oh, like why would I even try to do this? How could I imagine this would even work? But I don't know, it really was just an experiment. I didn't really want to say fuck you to photography or anything, but I was curious if I could pull it off, you know, if people just fetishize like high quality and like high resolution so much that I did want to kind of push back on that, because like it doesn't need to be that way to be appreciated or interesting, I thought anyways. But but yeah, but it's funny because, you know, the quality of cell phone photos is really getting so high that it's really not, you know, they're sort of getting close. So I'm glad that the project existed when it did, because it is like a, I mean, I think for a photographer, it's very, when you see them, it's very obvious that these are like kind of unphotographic. Something that Ryan McGinley told me once, that we were talking about, this is a funny little name drop, but like we were talking about like making pictures, and at the time he kind of was just like, you know what, like I'm not really trying to make a photograph. And when he said that, I really understood what he meant. He was like, you know, he was not trying to make something that was too shiny. And that always stuck with me. And I think it helped me with this, with the phone series stuff. Just like, oh, like, you know, like you don't have to be making a photograph. You can like, and it's also about the quantity. I think the quantity of it also is necessary. Like I need like the like Lonely City is kind of, I made it intentionally kind of overwhelming, as like in terms of like how much there is of it, because it also speaks to just how we consume content with our phones. It's overwhelming, and it's and I kind of wanted to sort of speak to that in the, it's just, you know, it's just full bleed, page after page, no words, just like, you know, it's kind of like, when you're just trapped in someone's story or whatever, you're just like, oh my God, there's so many, it's so much of this stuff. The sharing with my friends aspect is ever present, but it became more of a photography project when I made a Tumblr. So I had made a Tumblr in, I don't know, I think 2009. That's when I sort of got addicted to posting them. So that's kind of when I started treating it more like a photography project. Like that's when the intention kind of kicked in, where I was like, oh, like yeah, like there's a certain way that I see stuff that the the phone needs to capture as opposed to a camera or whatever. Yeah, it was like super validating. Like how people reacted to the work really helped me sort of keep making it, and like really, because I mean, like sharing photos with my friends is something that you and I, everybody, we all do that now. It's something that is completely it's everywhere and every single day. But yeah, I think like after the Tumblr, I started treating it more like a real project. Yeah, it's funny. I have all this conflict about putting out the cell phone stuff because it's sort of like am I just that guy or whatever. I've only published one book of film photos, and it was very, very small. It was just about a trip to Vietnam. Like I'm working on a new project where it's just my film photography, and you could call it street photography, even though I don't like love that term, but that's mostly what it is. It's street photography and portraiture, and it's really just me, walking around trying to put myself in places that maybe I wouldn't go to normally or don't belong in. It's also about people, my relationships. It's about connecting with places and people. And I don't know, I'm just trying to interpret how I live in this world, I guess. I try to let the work do the talking because like I really am uncomfortable talking about it because I feel like I'm just like not really saying what I need to be saying about it. It's mostly about connection. Sometimes I feel like I don't know what I'm doing here. But when I look at the work that I make, it makes me feel a little bit better. And it makes me feel connected to this place, and the people that are around me, that are close to me and not close to me, strangers or otherwise. So that's kind of why I do it. But yeah, it's funny, like we were talking about earlier. It is, but it's painful. It's much more painful than any other, like the phone stuff, for example. That stuff is just sort of so casual and relaxed and no stakes. But my other work is like I like kind of, I don't know. It's agonizing. I mean, I want the work to say what I can't say. But it is also vague. The work is very unspecific. I think it sort of kind of how like a poem works, it's not, it's telling you something in a way that you need to spend time with to understand. Comparing stuff to poems is a little corny, but I think like that, I think it works. I wouldn't be able to live with myself not really, really going in on this. Like, if 20 years from now, if I felt like, oh, I really wish that I did that thing, or I really wish I tried harder, I cannot tolerate that type of regret. Obviously, like living in LA, you see a lot of, and especially if you're driving around a lot, you see a lot of that stuff. There's car accidents constantly. I just think it is a unavoidable component of living in a city like LA, where it's just cars. Cars are everywhere. People are everywhere. And crashes are going to happen. It's so fast. I mean, like you come upon a situation, especially if the cops aren't there yet, like it's kind of an amazing thing to witness. Just like two people crashing into each other and you're there. It's funny when you show it in a series. I don't know, it's kind of pretty. I think it's sort of an unavoidable aspect of life here. And so I think that's why I do it. And it's not, and I don't even know what I'm going to do with all this stuff. I think that's sort of what being a photographer in this way helps teach you is you don't need to have a plan. Like having a plan sometimes really messes things up. Sure, you do need to know what you're doing, and having intention is important when you're making art, but also there is this surrender that you need to have to like not knowing what you're doing and just dealing with it later. I think like that is sort of something that I have to think about all the time, is that just do it, but don't think about it. Think about it later. And I think like that applies to even like if you're taking photo of someone who might not want their photo to be taken, or you're scared to do it, or like if you need to apologize, like just apologize. Don't think about consequences, you know, just do it. And I think I think it kind of ties back to being a skateboarder too. A lot of skateboarding deals with hesitation it'll get you hurt. When your mind and your body are ready, just do it. Don't think. I think many skateboarders would understand the like don't think about it advice, because it's just like there are moments where you need to let go dark, and just black out, and it will happen. Because the moment you start to, especially like if you're like in the air going down something, or like it, thinking too much will like get you fucked up. So that is something that in both worlds exist. Like just you need to just trust your instinct, and just react how you need to react. Don't question it. That sort of applies to both worlds. Where the thinking comes in when you're shooting photos is really about reassurance, pushing yourself, kind of like, hey, like, keep walking or keep going, or just remembering how your camera works. Like, don't fuck this up because you're not thinking about how to use your equipment or something like that. But for me, the most sort of like excruciating thought happens when you're actually, when you're creating an edit, because you need to be very intentional, taking it all and trying to put it together and making a meaningful story. That takes a different type of work. It has less to do with chance, and hope and muscle memory. It has more to do with like how you want to tell a story, or how you know how to tell a story. The platform that I want to use the most is books. I think books are the most important, and just the way that I want to present work. Like galleries, okay, sure. Instagram, inevitable. But books is the real way that I want to do it. But having an Instagram is tough. I think it's challenging. I think because it, like everybody else, you feel really forced to use it, even if you don't. And when you don't use it, you feel like losing out in participating in the world, which is, I think, its design, and it's very smart for that. But honestly, I use it so much, and it helps me so much. But it's a dangerous thing to, as a photographer, to let make decisions for you. I think the dangers are that oversharing is a danger, and sometimes you feel really jealous or have envy, or you feel kind of shitty about like that you're not doing enough. It really tries to tell you that you're not doing enough a lot, and that's pretty harmful.
If you'd like to see some more of Jerry's work, I'll have some links in the description. I highly recommend checking out some of his books. A massive thank you to him for having us at his house. And finally, before I wrap up this video, I want to say a thank you to Squarespace for making this production possible. Squarespace is an incredible all-in-one website building platform that I've been using for over 7 years now to host my photography portfolio. Their customizable templates make it so easy to get a website up and running with your photography. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, you can hit the link in my description for a 14-day free trial of Squarespace, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Willem for 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain.